This might seem like such a little thing, you don't even have to think about it before you make your decision. But when I start working with someone on their videos, the question always comes up anyway, and that's a good thing, because the answer has a lot of ripple effects. It's about the decision to stand or sit while being in your videos. Let's figure out where you stand in this, or sit. So, first of all, if you're lucky enough to work with a videographer, it's always a good idea to find reasons to both sit and stand. But for the majority of people working alone, it's best to make a choice. And that should be based on the approach to the video's topic, and to some extent, your personal style. For example, I first thought about this question in 2010 when I started making videos and decided that the only way I could project enough energy to get through the lens would be to stand. That way, all the chakras are lined up and, whatever frequency I'm working with would have the best chance of flowing through me and getting broadcast clearly. Okay, maybe that's how I would say it now. Back then, I would have said, "Wow, Steve, you look like death warmed over. Why don't you stand up and try it again?" And there is something to be said for having enough energy to move the energy needle. But having said that, the answer is a little more nuanced. The perception of you can be enormously affected by the approach to your topic. Like, if you're talking about something serious or more in-depth, it might work better seated, because of how that kind of information is usually conveyed to us, like on TV, but usually with a lot of phony gravitas. The audience is treated like an undifferentiated lump of humanity, and you hear words like, "all you folks out there," or "hardworking Americans." I would be careful with this very establishmentarianism model. Another way to make sitting work is to go all the way to the other end of the formality scale, as if the video is meant to feel more like a personal conversation or an interview. Then sitting feels more intimate and relaxed, more like just two friends sitting and talking over a cup of tea. Then, getting a little more formal, you might want to stay seated for videos that do a lot of teaching, where you get into detailed analysis or deeper explanations. That way, the speaker's movements don't distract from the ideas. And if you're demonstrating small electronics, like we sometimes do, especially in courses, sitting does make it easier to set up the shots with more than one camera. Well, because you're not moving around, which makes the shots more predictable. And then finally, if you're doing your best Joe Rogan impression and talking for hours at a time, it can be exhausting standing up, and you don't look so great after an hour. Now, there are times it's best to stand in your videos. 95% of my videos are shot standing up, mostly for energy purposes. But there are content-related reasons to stand up. If the video is meant to energize or motivate your audience, standing can broadcast a feeling of strength and dynamism. There are the obvious reasons for standing, like doing stand-up comedy. Have you ever seen a sit-down comedy show?
Speaking of Spain, Generalissimo Francisco Franco remains deceased at this time.
Okay, point taken. The other obvious reasons would be if you were teaching movement itself, like dance or yoga or weightlifting, which would bridge naturally into teaching things like cooking or home improvement or working on your plane or whatever. And then, if you're just trying to emulate the feeling of being in a classroom, you might stand up, but to me that feels more like giving up. Video allows you to turn any boring lecture into a magically engaging project with a few special effects. So, my choice to stand in most of my videos is a very personal choice, given all the reasons you might want to sit instead. So I would have to say, this is a very personal choice for you too. If you need to stand to produce enough power to project your energy through the lens, then you know what you have to do. Of course, it's also true that you can learn to project while seated. Okay, so I have a few videos on setting up the standing up space. But if you want to set up a sitting down space, the information for and demonstration of that is also here. It might seem like a small decision to make, but small decisions lead to bigger ones. And before you know it, you've got a happy shooting routine and taken a leadership role in your market. If you're watching this, there's a good chance that that is where you belong. See you out there.